Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Invisibly Irreplaceable, a podcast by Betsy Sagebrook. We are so happy that you're here because we just love writing stories. And what's more fun than writing stories than sharing stories? So if you like what you hear, feel free to pass it on to a friend. Like, follow, subscribe, share it with your girlfriends, whatever floats your boat. We're just happy you're here. Today's episode is called The Competitor. Tana punched the code into the keypad on the metal door and swung it open into darkness. Stepping forward, she reaches to her left, flips the switch, and watches as light illuminates the gym. Housed in a warehouse complete with garage doors and zero air conditioning, Penns Valley CrossFit had become her second home, complete with a second family. Tana turned on 4 screens on the walls around the workout space. Punching into her phone, she pulls up the app telling them all the workout of the day, or WOD, and transfers that to the screens. Selecting a playlist from the phone on the wall, she knew her 4 p.m. class would fight her if she picked anything other than gangster rap. Ironic in this part of the country. She would switch to 90s grunge for her 5 p.m. class. It had a couple early teenage boys whose tender ears were not yet ready for the harsh reality of the raw lyrics about adult choices. The 6 p.m. class was the easiest going of them all. She was pretty sure a good handful of them routinely smoked pot, and they never had much of an opinion about the music. They were usually too busy talking over her instructions to each other, like middle-aged feral cats. This CrossFit gym, or box as they were called, had 2 morning classes and 3 evening classes Monday through Friday. There were 3 Saturday morning classes and none on Sundays. The place was closed during the day, but members had the code to the door and could come and go whenever they wanted to work out. But this wasn't an introvert's gym. Most of the classes were filled with the same people, and they operated as tiny families. Newcomers were welcome, but time together was the backbone of most relationships, and some of these people had been working out with each other for decades. They saw their gym friends more than their family members. State College couldn't support more than a handful of boxes with a permanent population of 40,000. This doubled when school was in session at Penn State, but there are a lot more cheaper places to work out when you are a broke college student. Tana sat down on a wooden bench by the lockers. She unbuckled her brown strappy sandals, yanked her navy blue haltered calico sundress up over her head, and stuffed them both into her gym bag. On the days she coaches, Tana wears her exercise shorts, or booty shorts, and a sports bra under her dress. It saved time and allowed for her to arrive and be ready to coach by 3:30 for the 4 o'clock class. Tana pulled on a pair of short white socks out of her bag and yanked them on before excavating her black Nike Metcon 9s. She worked each foot into the specialized shoes, tying them with a quick glance at the clock. Tana was eagerly hoping to replace the shoes with the Metcon 10s, but the ones she had on weren't quite done yet. Her mother couldn't understand why Tana would want to spend $175 on a pair of shoes that would never touch the sidewalk. But the ability to customize a new shoe for herself was incredibly tempting. She could pick the color she wanted and add custom text. These 9s would be the backup pair that lived in Tana's locker. If she podiumed this weekend in her competition, the 10s would be her reward, Tana decided. She needed to remember to do nice things for herself. Tana worked in finance for a large trucking company as her day job. She managed their international fuel tax agreement reporting, revenue and expense tracking, and cost per mile analysis. She'd been there 5 years, and it was her first big girl job since college, and for the most part, she liked it. Tana was the least experienced in the department and managed to hold her own. Her immediate supervisor was a woman named Judy who made sure Tana learned to speak up for herself, especially in a male-dominated industry. It didn't hurt Tana's confidence that she happened to know at 5'6" tall and 165 pounds, she was stronger than most of the men in her building. Her personal records for back squat was 265 pounds, and deadlift was 315. Tana kept these facts to herself, but she felt more comfortable taking up space with this information in her back pocket. Tana took her own jar lids off. Thank you very much. Carrying all her groceries in at once was another side perk. Bronze muscles rippled and threaded across Tana's back like beautiful cords of a tapestry. They felt sore and tight today after yesterday's workout. She had been practicing her clean and jerks, and the repeated yanking of the weighted bar off the floor, bringing it up into the front rack position, and then launching it over her head repeatedly was a lot to ask. While men had stronger arms, women had stronger legs, and Tana could squat for days. She had signed up for her 5th competition a while back, and today marked the start of her rest period before the weekend. Standing up, Tana pulled her hot pink booty shorts down in the back to make sure her cheeks weren't hanging out, a common side effect of the 1-inch inseam. She wore her favorite black and pink checked haltered sports bra. It was strappy enough not to show under a dress at work, and 1990s enough to scratch her itch for vintage clothing in throwback styles. While Tana had long, beautiful blonde hair that hung below her waist and sky blue eyes that pierced, not sparkled, she was not your California Barbie. Tana was pure muscle under her clothes. Her taut stomach displayed a grid of hard work. Her thighs defied the glorified thigh gap and were thickly sculpted instead. Her butt was the powerhouse of most of her movements, and there was not a jiggle for miles when she walked. Tana was proud of her body, but not for the reason most people thought. She had a body meant for physical challenges and extreme endurance, not just decorating the room. Tana wasn't conventionally beautiful. A dog bite from her childhood left a scar down her left cheek, and her face leaned more towards handsome than gorgeous. But conventional beauty was never her goal. Tana didn't scorn the women who highlighted their hair, wore false lashes, and glued on nails. Women like that showed up at competitions routinely and spanked her with their scores. But Tana resented the fact that just because she had boobs, she was obligated to make becoming as cosmetically pleasing as possible a life goal. That wasn't one of hers. The scent of "take me for who I am inside" or "walk away" wafted off her skin like a pheromonal warning. Makeup was a non-starter for Tana. After an assault by a drunken fraternity bro during a party her senior year at Penn State, Tana stopped highlighting her face and started wrestling with PTSD. She used the skills she'd gained from high school soccer, swimming, and lacrosse to lean hard into CrossFit, and ultimately became her own bodyguard. "Hey, Coach, how you been? Ready for Sunday?" The metal door swung open and Roderick walked in. With the energy level of a border collie and the personality of a golden retriever, Roderick was a fun guy to coach. Always accepting of feedback, he threw his whole self into each workout and had a stupid amount of visible muscles under his chocolate skin for a kid who lived off of Chick-fil-A and Sonic. His giant smile was always on like a display window for his whole personality. Tall, broad-shouldered, and good-natured, Roderick was the first to welcome newbies to the 4 o'clock class. "Ready as I'll ever be," Tana responded, fist-bumping him with one hand and electronically signing him into class with the other. Roderick ran his own business and did personal training on the side. He and Tana agreed to be partners in a local CrossFit competition that weekend. Immediately following Roderick were Eve and Lakia, a couple of volunteer EMTs whose paying jobs Tana could never remember. Trey, Steven, Amir, Sarah, Advik, and Trinity filled out the class. A few more latecomers showed up as she went over the workout, but the class capped at 15 to allow for individualized attention. The 4 o'clock class was on the early side of after work, and this group were mostly in their 20s and 30s. Career builders with ambition, drive, and dedication. They attacked the workout with a single-minded focus and were rewarded with their results. A handful of fire breathers in the class would set the pace and the bar for the rest of the classes that evening. Each workout was timed, with a cap that gave a hard stop when the time ran out. They did a warm-up, some strength training or weightlifting, and an intense workout that got the heart rate up as well as challenging alternating regions of the body. The purpose of CrossFit was functional fitness, achieved by avoiding machines and lifting free weights that used all of the muscles in the body, rather than just isolating a few like machines do. Each workout had several levels of hard to pick from. Prescribed, which was how the workout was intended to be done in its most difficult original version. Scaled, which toned down some of the weight and repetitions, and sometimes a third community version, where similar, less challenging movements were substituted in place of gymnastics and technical maneuvers. Ring rows instead of pull-ups. Dumbbell shoulder presses instead of handstand push-ups. Seated rope pull-ups instead of rope climbs. Basically, athletes were welcome to modify any movement that was above their skill set as long as they were using the same muscles to build towards the goal of mastering that skill. Everyone was working out at the same level of difficulty for them, but not everyone was doing the same movement. Tana appreciated the inclusion of CrossFit more as a coach than when she started out 6 years ago. The morning classes had more of a middle-aged or older crowd mixed in with the young athletes. People who had finally hit a point in their life where they could prioritize themselves after putting everyone else first for so long. It was either join a gym or buy a rascal scooter by that point. The diverse mix of abilities, a different workout every day, and extreme competitiveness was what made the sport unique. Well, that and the insane gymnastics techniques. With its nod towards the military and law enforcement, CrossFit liked to name its special workouts after fallen soldiers, and the rest after women. A cringy practice that made Tana's skin crawl when she thought about it, but really the only thing she disliked about the sport. "Time!" Tana yelled at the end of the workout. "Great job, everyone. Make sure you wipe down your equipment and put away anything you got out." Roderick was lying flat on his back on the floor mats, just like most of his classmates, gasping and sweating. It was the burpees over the rower that jacked everyone's heart rate up today. "I promise I will start resting now," Roderick said from the floor as Tana stood over him. He was a 6-day-a-week athlete and struggled to sit still. Tana knew he would be just fine at the competition. That man had no chill. The summer heat was just starting in State College, but in a few weeks, this building would feel like an oven. Tana walked around to each member of the class, giving out fist bumps and feedback before the next class came in. Roderick filled his Nalgene bottle with protein powder and water from the fountain before shaking it vigorously. He always consumed protein within an hour of his workout. Tana had competed with several different partners in the past and much preferred to train with a friend. They pushed her harder than she would push herself alone. It was also nice to know a handful of other gym members were planning to attend the competition and cheer them on. After coaching 2 more classes and shutting down all the screens, Tana was free to return to her humble abode for the first time since 6 a.m. that morning. A dozen other members had come in to work out on their own, so Tana made sure one of them would lock up after they left and grabbed her bag. Heading towards her white RAV4, Tana checked her watch. It was 7:30 p.m., and her stomach was growling. That cookies and cream Barbell protein bar after work was long gone, and Tana hustled to pick up a rotisserie chicken and a bag of Caesar salad from the grocery store on her way home. Tana worshipped protein like every other competitive lifter and saw no point in cooking for one. She lived on protein bars and rotisserie chickens like smokers chewed nicotine gum. Chucking her navy blue Pennsylvania Trucking Company bag into the foyer floor by her apartment door, Tana took the groceries to the kitchen and assembled her meal. Back in Black by AC/DC rang through the small kitchen, and Tana smiled to herself as she snatched her pink phone off the counter and tapped the button to FaceTime. "Hey, Michael," Tana sang cheerily into the phone.
"I am excited to
What's
watch
up?
you on Saturday."
Michael's assistive device played into the phone. Sandy-haired, brown-eyed Michael sat at the kitchen table in a blue Adidas hoodie with his talker by his left hand. Technically, Michael can speak without it, but you have to have spent time around him to learn his words. Michael uses the device when he makes phone calls because it's louder and clearer. Michael was 30 years old and had been born a 1-pound preemie with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy was a group of neurological disorders to the brain, usually occurring around birth. It's a wild condition because, like autism, the spectrum is large. Anywhere from people with mild conditions that you might not notice to profound effects leaving them unable to walk or speak. Michael was right in the middle. He had stiffness and spasticity to the right side of his body called hemiplegia and struggled to form the words he wanted to speak called dysarthria. Michael could get around short distances with a special crutch inside his apartment, but used a wheelchair when he went out and a talker when he was on the phone or meeting someone new. But where people go wrong is assuming Michael had a low IQ just because his speech is slurred. Michael's mind was whip smart, and he was doing his own computer coding in high school back in 2010. Unfortunately, his body didn't always do what he wanted it to, and Michael struggled to use his right arm and right leg. He wasn't in a great position to be traditionally employed, so Michael did independent computer work and ran a channel on YouTube talking about his life and showing people a behind-the-curtains glimpse at living with CP. And they loved it! Michael had thousands of followers and a large network of other people with CP. Tana was genuinely shocked at how big his following had gotten and beyond proud of Michael's success. It helped him afford a wheelchair van and paid for some of his medical expenses. "Are you coming to watch me on Saturday?"
Steve is bringing
Tana
me.
asked playfully. Steve O'Grady was Michael's longtime caregiver and as Irish as Guinness and soda bread eaten on St. Patrick's Day. His red hair and green eyes were as noteworthy as his Irish brogue, and the Galway crest tattoo taking over most of his right bicep. Steve was a huge fan of Gaelic football, but also had become a fan of the CrossFit Open and strongman games since immigrating to the U.S. Yay! I was hoping you guys would come. You still have all the information
Yes.
I texted you,
Compete
right?
for me and
Tana
finish strong.
double-checked. Michael requested. He said that before every competition. Eventually, Tana had finished strong, tattooed across her shoulder blade in script, with a delicate barbell underneath. Not visible at work, but on display every time she worked out. Michael's favorite sport was watching Tana compete. He always said he would play sports if he had 4 good limbs, but refused to try any sport with just 2. It was an ongoing argument between the siblings. Michael's right arm and right leg often spasm and swing around involuntarily when he gets excited. The Special Olympics weren't an option for Michael because he didn't have an intellectual disability. But there were other options which stubborn Michael refused to acknowledge. Instead, Michael transformed himself and Steve into Tana's biggest cheerleaders, marking their calendars with each competition she signed up for and staunchly attending them all. An unlikely duo to have screaming from the sidelines, but no one could boast a more loyal or less intelligible cheering section. "All right, I love you, and I will see you there on Saturday," Tana promised. Michael says and clicks off. Tana carried her dinner into the living room, turned on Netflix, and selected Brooklyn Nine-Nine. An hour later, she was almost asleep. Tana had trained her tail off that month, and the calluses on her hands were permanent. She dreamed about gripping the bar at night and squatting below 90 degrees. Her social life was crap, and she'd stopped returning phone calls weeks ago. She only replied to text messages, and those were hours and days later. The only friends who saw her were either working alongside her in class and at the gym. Tana got tunnel vision when it came to competitions. Tana trained early before work so that she could coach afternoon classes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Getting up at 5 a.m. made staying awake past 9 p.m. almost impossible. Setting her blue ceramic Dollar Tree plate in the sink, Tana put away the leftover chicken and finished her glass of water before dragging herself down the thick gray carpeted hallway into the shower. Hydration was just under protein on the list of things Tana tracked. Turning the hot water all the way on and the cold just a touch, Tana did her best to relax her lactic acid-filled muscles. She didn't stretch like she should, and her body was telling her all about it. Finishing her nightly routine, Tana pulled on a worn-to-perfection green Rogue t-shirt she'd acquired via an old boyfriend. He was long gone, but this ultra-soft, long-waisted lifting shirt made a perfect nightgown. Sunday morning, Tana was up at 5:30 a.m. full of nerves, as if she'd never done this before. Tana drank a protein smoothie as she repacked her gym bag and double-checked she had her grips, tape, water bottle, spare chalk, hydration salts, pre-workout, extra protein bars, and Band-Aids. Her knee sleeves, jump rope, spare clothes, Metcons, and Nerds gummy clusters were already in the bag from yesterday. Tana and Roderick had agreed to meet at the gym the competition was being hosted at 7 a.m. The Valley Fit Games were starting at 8. By 8:30, Tana and Roderick were checked in, wearing matching red shirts with Valley Fit Games on the shoulder. His, a sweat-wicking t-shirt, hers a cropped tank, and black shorts, and they were almost done warming up. There were 3 heats with several hours in between each workout. Tana scanned the crowd and saw Steve first, standing next to Michael in his chair. They were granted front row access so Michael could see and started waving and calling her name when she looked up. Tana waved back and blew her brother a kiss. Michael and Steve were both wearing State College CrossFit t-shirts that she had ordered for them last year when her box was getting new merch. Their shirts were a green camo print with white letters around a silhouette of a mountain lion. To be fair, everything in State College was covered in mountain lions. This town loved them some lions. Roderick had been optimistic, ready, and eager to compete all morning. This wasn't his first competition, and he didn't take it nearly as seriously as Tana. Tana had been a functional mute. She didn't say much before competitions and got all up in her head. Incapable of worry, Roderick did all he could to pull her out of her thoughts and ground her. Tana appreciated his efforts, the playful teasing and punches in the shoulder. They almost worked. She had finished her pre-workout drink during the warm-up and was therapeutically caffeinated. The first heat was 10 minutes long, and they had to do as many rounds as possible in that time. It started with 5 synchronized wall walks, laying chest down on the floor with your feet against a wall and literally walking your feet up the wall. Then 10 synchronized box jump overs and 20 synchronized kettlebell swings. Those wall walks are going to be the hardest part, Tana thought, looking at the WOD. 10 minutes didn't sound like a long time to most people, but it could crush your will to live if you didn't pace yourself. Tana and Roderick started off a little rocky. His lanky 6'3" frame didn't move at the same pace as Tana, and they kept having to adjust to stay synchronized. They caught up a little more on the box jump overs, and by the time they got to kettlebell swings, they were catching their breath and keeping time together. Then it was time for wall walks again. By the time the clock was up, Tana and Roderick had done 8 rounds and were 2 wall walks into their 9th round. The sweat poured off their faces in tiny rivulets, like crystal streams picking their way down a mountain. Puddles of sweat speckled the black gym mats around the wooden boxes and left sweaty outlines of their bodies on the mats in front of the wall. Grabbing their drinks, Tana and Roderick wobbled wearily over to Lakia, Amir, and a few friends who had shown up to support them. No hugs were given, that would be gross. But there were plenty of fist bumps and high fives. "You guys crushed that workout," Lakia said, beaming up at Roderick. "Yeah, that's my coach," Amir yelled loudly, fist bumping Tana. Amir was an amazing hype man. Tana smiled gratefully, then excused herself and weaved her way across the gym. Michael doesn't use a talker when he cheers, preferring to yell from the heart and punch the air with his good hand. His other arm may be somewhat of a free spirit at times, but Steve usually stands on the right side to block any flailing motions from hitting strangers. As she approached the pair, Tana could see 4 guys flicking their eyes over at Michael, talking low to each other and snickering. They wore Penn State fraternity shirts with identical Greek lettering and appeared to be there to support one of their own. Tana watched as one guy in a backwards Nittany Lions hat drew his arm up in a contracted position and swung the other one around wildly in the air. The group laughed and split up before Tana got close. Backwards hat guy lumbered off towards the men's room, a green vape pen visible from the pocket of his khaki Banana Republic shorts. His shorter, pimply, narrow-shouldered friend tagged along beside him like a chihuahua idolizing a pit bull. Tana hated bullies. Growing up with a differently abled brother, Tana was sensitive to alpha bros. She spotted them with a finely tuned radar, causing something deep in her chest to ignite. Michael told Tana he planned to stay through the second WOD, then would probably need to head home. Michael's muscles frequently cramped when he held one position too long, and all day as a spectator in his wheelchair was more than his hip could tolerate. Tana understood and planned to stop by his apartment on her way home. After a period of rest, Tana and Roderick rallied themselves for a second WOD of the competition. This time, one partner rode the dreaded assault bike for as many calories as they could get, while the other partner did 20 shuttle runs back and forth, 20 chest-to-bar pull-ups, and 20 deadlifts. Then they switched, repeating as many times as possible for 8 minutes. Don't be fooled by the short timer. Things were about to get grueling. Tana started off doing the shuttle runs, and she was quick. Middle school track had trained her well, and she kept running all through high school. The pull-ups were miserable. Men had the advantage here, but Tana excelled at the deadlifts. They were one of her favorite movements anyway. They switched at 3 minutes and 58 seconds. Then Tana hopped on the bike and pedaled for all she was worth. She stood for the first 2 seconds to get things cranking, then sat down and pumped the handlebars with all her might. Pain and fatigue shot through her shoulders, more so than her thighs, but she didn't let up. This was why she did better in partner comps than individual. After what felt like the longest 8 minutes of her life, Tana slid off the bike and nearly hit the floor when the buzzer sounded. Her quads were jelly, and her arms dangled limply by her sides. She stumbled over to Roderick and told him, "Good job," while bumping knuckles and gasping, then went in search of hydration. "I'm going to go say goodbye to my brother," Tana said to Roderick as she came up for more air from her Awala. "His back and hip bother him, so he's heading home." "I'll come," Roderick volunteered himself. "I want to meet him. You talk about him all the time." Tana nodded, too tired to feel one way or another, and led the way. She had mentioned Michael during class through the years and knew he would like Roderick. Everyone liked Roderick. Steve had texted her to meet them outside. The crowd was growing, and it would take them a minute to weave the wheelchair through to the parking lot. Roderick and Tana pushed through the side door out into the sunlight, an aroma of body odor perfuming the air behind them. Heading towards the parking lot, they saw Steve rolling Michael down the concrete ramp at the back of the building. "You guys did so good," Michael announced as they got close. His face lit up like a Christmas tree. Michael always got that way after watching Tana compete. She would push herself a million times harder to make him happy. There was nothing she wouldn't do to bring joy to her big brother's life. He was her best friend. It wasn't fair that he was born into a poorly functioning body, and she wasn't. Tana made certain she never took her abilities for granted and maxed them out to her fullest capacity. Walking in step with Steve, Tana introduced the men and started answering questions about how it felt to compete, how the pull-ups blew out her arms, and the deadlifts were the part she looked forward to most. Roderick hated the shuttle runs with his height working against him. The sky was clear blue and the parking lot full of SUVs and pickup trucks. Michael's van was over by a rusty blue metal dumpster, in the one reserved spot for wheelchair-accessible vans. Tana smelled the chemical aroma of skunk wafting over the dumpster as they got close. Rounding the corner of the dumpster, Tana came face to face with backwards hat bro and his scrawny Chihuahua friend. They shuffled to stick the green pen out of sight in their pocket, and Tana saw a flask disappear into Chihuahua's hoodie. These idiots couldn't have been more than 19. Up closer, Tana recognized the fraternity they belonged to from her senior year, and though it wasn't the same man, her body immediately went into high alert. "Hey, it's the Gimp," Backwards Hat said with a sloppy smirk on his face and waved one arm in the air. Chihuahua laughed. Tana's eyes narrowed and she cocked her head. "What did you say?" "Come on, man. I like watching Forrest Gump cheer." He never got to finish his sentence. Tana saw Roderick's shoulders tense and knew that a black man swinging on a white boy in Pennsylvania would never end well. Social media would be all over that like dip spit on a beer can. But a white girl taking out an arrogant punk of any variety would likely stay pretty quiet. With the reflexes of a rattlesnake, Tana rocked back on her right heel, cocked her right elbow that was suddenly not so tired, and followed through like a heavyweight champion. Backwards Hat never saw it coming as they all watched as her fists connected and his head snapped back, chin to the sky, both his feet flying out from under him like a cartoon character. He landed on the asphalt on his back, all of the air exiting his lungs. "Get out of here," Tana yelled, not realizing she was shaking. "Go!" she screamed. Her whole body trembled as she watched Chihuahua scampering around, tugging and pulling his dazed friend up from the parking lot and over to a brand new red Ford F-250. A graduation present, no doubt. Roderick's jaw dropped as he put his arm around Tana and pulled her close to stop her shaking. "Are you okay?" Steve immediately cupped her right hand, which was starting to throb, and inspected it for broken bones, mumbling threats of Irish bodily harm under his breath. Michael sat silent, eyes wide, good hand over his mouth in disbelief. It would take him a second to form out a sentence, but Tana knew exactly what he'd say. "I'm fine, Michael. I'm fine. No one gets to treat you that way, and guys like him think the rules don't apply to them. I'm still going to finish the competition. Don't worry. Roderick, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize to me, Rocky. You did what you had to do. We can call it right now if you want to." "That looks like it hurts," Roderick offered good-naturedly. "No," Tana said firmly. "I'm fine. It's okay. I'm not quitting." Steve had Tana swallow 800 milligrams of ibuprofen before they loaded into the van. Tana promised to stop by Michael's after the competition to tell him how they did. "I have something to show you," Michael said mischievously. "Finish strong, Tana." Tana nodded, squeezed her brother's arm, and allowed Roderick to lead her back through the crowds. The final WOD was absolutely brutal. A 1,000-meter row, followed by 150 air squats, 100 push-ups, 50 thrusters, 100 more push-ups, another 150 air squats, and a second 1,000-meter row. Tana's swollen hand shot pain up her arm every time she used it. She collapsed and no-repped 3 times during the push-ups. Air squats was fine, thank goodness, but the constant pulling of the rower and the push-ups made Tana wonder if she might be doing permanent damage if there was a fracture. At one point, the rower bar flew out of her hand, costing them precious time, and twice she lost her grasp during thrusters. Roderick tried to shoulder more of the grippy movements and leave her more air squats to do, but there was only so much he could do for her. They were definitely not going to podium. Tana felt like she let her entire box down. Unsurprisingly, they came in last for that WOD. Their competitors were almost bionic in their endurance and showed no mercy. After the results were in, Tana sunk her face into her hands as she apologized to Roderick. "I'm so sorry. That was so stupid. I shouldn't have hit that guy during a competition. I cost us a win." Tana looked up at Roderick mournfully. Roderick gazed back down with compassion and shrugged. "If you hadn't have hit him, I would have, so the results would have been the same either way." His smirk told her he wasn't that upset. Guys like Roderick lived life with an open hand. There would be other competitions in the future. No need to get worked up over this one. Later that evening, over pizza at Michael's apartment, she told him about finishing dead last. She assured him it was not his fault, and she'd acted impulsively. It was stupid, but that was her choice, and she would do it again. "Show her," Michael said, with a nod to Steve. Steve leaned over and shoved up the short camouflaged sleeve on Michael's good arm. There in black letters, with red, unhappy-looking skin around it, were the words, "Finish strong," with a matching barbell. The end.